BKC, which stands for Blaze Kicking Chicken, is one of the most legendary competitive Pokemon players of all time. His success stretches back to the days of Generation 4 Wi-Fi battles and the very early days of Pokemon battle simulators. BKC has had tournament success and created metagame-defining sets and strategies in multiple generations, and is a strong contender for greatest Pokemon player in history. BKC also has a YouTube channel that personally helped educate me on many of Pokemon's older generations, and is part of the reason I am now such an advocate for Generation 3 OU. On top of this, BKC is a movie connoisseur and is currently in the process of directing his very own independent film. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me on the Fridge podcast, and how are you?
Thank you for making me sound so cool, first of all. This has made my day already. I am wonderful, I think. I have a lot to do later, but I feel newly energized by all that praise.
Let's not stroke your ego too much there. Let's keep it reasonable. You've been making some interesting videos recently about, it feels like there's a lot of controversy surrounding Generation 5 at the moment, following Smogon Premier League. It just never ends, does it? There's just always something.
No. I don't know. I hope that they, or that we, I guess, since I should really ladder for that suspect. I hope we are finally ready to take a more drastic plunge, since, I've reiterated this point a million times in my video, so I'll keep it short. But after Cloyster hopefully gets banned, then I think, I don't know what the next step will be, because there are plenty of good ideas, but right now it seems like more of fighting the policy rather than what's best for the tier. And there's like a whole ideological debate between, should we stick to the rules, and then, we make the rules, we can change them, and, old gens versus current gens, like, should the same standards apply? A lot of what makes old gens so appealing is that they have a core player base, and thus you don't want to necessarily throw the tier out from scratch and start over. And yeah, I mostly am fine with any direction it might go in, as long as there is a direction to go in. But I mostly hope that happens in the first place, because there's nothing that drives me more up the wall than bureaucratic nonsense getting in the way of playing the game, which is also a tale as old as Pokemon tiering itself, and even human history, because we can learn so much from Pokemon. And it's always the people who don't play the game / don't have an investment in a certain tier, and just, I don't know, I won't start like accusing them of power tripping or whatever, but I gotta say, the devotion some people have to preserving the rules as they are at all costs, it definitely makes me raise some eyebrows for, a couple of reasons.
Yeah, so for a bit of context, folks, if you're not aware, Gen 5 OU is a very divisive generation that's had a lot of balance issues historically with like permanent weather and gems and like really powerful threats like Volcarona. So there's a lot of debate about what to do and what the identity of the format should be. Because, for years now we've been playing with like Latios, Keldeo, these really broken threats that centralize things in a massive way. And now Cloyster is currently the topic of the month, I think, as, with Shell Smash, Icicle Crash. It was already a discussion to ban Cloyster in the past, back when gems were allowed, and I think that maybe we thought banning gems would solve the problem, but I'm not fully up to date with the metagame, admittedly, but I think Cloyster's ability to match up swing and just instantly win in the right situations is kind of unhealthy, people think.
Yeah. I'm going to actually you for a second and say, actually, Cloyster uses Icicle Spear as its stab because of the skill link ability. Anyway.
That's what I meant. I misspoke.
I understand. You know what I do? I say Ice Crash all the time instead of Icicle Crash, and I hope that someone goes, actually, it's Icicle Crash, so I can say, I know, I just want to annoy people like you. Yeah, so what you said is right, is that Cloyster basically, in my view, is that it adds too much of a powerful matchup element to the tier. Punishing sand teams is fine. Something like Mamoswine does that in a healthy way, because Mamoswine will absolutely pick a sand team apart, but it is not so automatic. It doesn't win the game on the spot. and for Cloister to be able to do that is the eyebrow raiser. And the reason why it's the topic of the month is because it was suspected before, and it narrowly avoided the vote. And there was going to be another test just to, make 100% sure. Let's see how the metagame develops after SPL, which is what people say every year. But one of the developments was that it now runs a mixed set. So previous good checks like Keldeo, Slowbro, Magnezone, Fortress, now they just absolutely get dropped by Hydro and HP Grass. And that makes it even more of an unhealthy guessing game presence than it was before. So it's just a ridiculously difficult Pokemon to stop, unreasonably so, and it doesn't really add much to the tier other than an extreme version of what already exists. So it is the archetypical degenerate hyper offense cheese Pokemon, the thing where you just click the setup button and hope it destroys everything. That kind of play should not be rewarded to this extent against a well-built team. And there's too many guessing games in the team builder to cover it. It's a very silly. And and the other reason why it's tested is not just because you had to look at it again, but because it is the one thing people can kind of agree on. There's so much debate about Black and White. It goes from ban Thundurus all the way up to unban Lugia.
Bring chlorophyll back. Do you see that one?
Yeah, silly stuff like that. So
I was even seeing people say recently to ban Sandforce Excadrill. Is that something?
No, I mean that would be good, but I think the most fundamental issue in the tier is Reuniclus, and this has been the case for 9 years now.
Jeez.
And I hope we just finally address it, because a lot of the worries are that if you remove something like Latios, it has a more destabilizing effect, or Excadrill, because of how much the metagame is shaped around them, so it has to be a more gradual thing. But with Reuniclus, then you are able to, fix the tier's biggest issue and not really remove what makes the metagame at its core. So Cloister and Reuniclus going, I think, would be really, really good. And Cloister it forces Citrus Berry, Reuniclus, and Ferrothorn to be used on serious tournament teams, which is absolutely ridiculous. Because if for no other reason, then by virtue of the fact that it hits you 5 times per turn, it has a good crit rate. A really good crit rate, and just one can be enough to push that thing. Oh, well, I never take more than 90% unless it crits. Oh, well, it has 5 chances to crit me. So, oops.
Yeah, there's more variance with that.
So the fact that Citrus Berry is really being used, because otherwise it is a completely inferior move to completely inferior item on both of those Pokemon. And it reminds me, it's not quite the same thing, but when people were suggesting Zoom Lens Slowbro to deal with Sandvale Garchomp, which is a real thing that happened, believe it or not. It's documented on the Smogon forums in case anyone thinks I'm making it up. Absolutely ridiculous stuff.
Zoom Lens, that gives you accuracy?
Right? It's you would never use it.
Never heard of this.
It gives you 20% more accuracy.
Don't tell the people in my Cacturne comments about that one. Because people are furious about Cacturne getting banned.
Well, it doesn't exist in Gen 3, so
there you
no
go.
help there. Yeah, just like Wide Lens doesn't. But Zoom Lens gives you 20% more accuracy, I believe, but you have to move second. So you can see how this is basically the worst item ever.
So you got to use it on Slowbro, right?
Yeah, and you make your Slowbro so much worse, just so you can make your 100% move actually 100%. Absolutely absurd stuff.
So, speaking on that topic, like not a lot of people know this, but I think there was a brief period where you kind of made your own version of Gen 5 OU and hosted a tournament for it, where you made some changes, like you banned Scald and re-allowed Tornadus and stuff.
People took. I didn't realize how seriously people were going to take that, because I also unbanned Tornadus Therian because I just kind of felt like it, not because I thought that Torn T would really be balanced without Rain. And I think from the games I saw, it still proved itself to be pretty absurd. So if I were to do it again, then I would not do it. But overall, like the removing of Rain and Scald, I mean, I don't think there were any issues from removing Scald, and that's another thing I would do, even though I know that one doesn't have as much support because the masses have been brainwashed. My theory, anyway, into or brainwashed, Stockholm syndrome, whatever it is, that makes people think Scald is an acceptable move to have when it does when burn is 12.5 and it's either accentuated by sandstorm chip or boosted by rain. I mean, it's ridiculous. So I guess the fact that Reuniclus is so broken kind of gets in the way of that, but Reuniclus is also broken, so, and you don't keep broken around because it keeps something else broken in check. So yeah, I think if I were to take it, because BKC PL 3 is about to start, I believe, so maybe I will throw in a more serious version of my ideal OU, because there was also no Reuniclus there, or Latios, or Zam, I think. I'm pretty sure.
Do you
No
think
Keldeo.
Alakazam should be banned in Gen 5?
It's just a Magic Guard spikes thing, Like, maybe now I'd try 2 slots, and one of them would be, ban the Magic Guarders, and the other would be ban spikes. Because people are talking about banning spikes seriously now. I mean, good luck getting everyone to agree on it enough for a suspect, let alone to get it actually banned. But it is undeniably the core of all the issues. Like, Latios is not broken without spikes banned, or with spikes banned. Reuniclus, almost surely not. Alakazam, same deal. The fact that they are such good spikes abusers and are so resilient in the face of spikes themselves, that is the whole issue that swings everything into just mirrors or extremes that are worse against the rest of the metagame in favor of their specific advantage against this. You know how, like, yeah, Porygon 2 beats Mega Rayquaza. Does that mean every team should have Porygon 2? It's not quite as extreme version of that. If we...
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel nuts because I use, like, somewhat abstract examples like that, and then people go, well, it's not the same thing. It's like, of course it's not the same thing. It's not supposed to be. It was to show the kind of thinking. So I hope that's clear. I was just thinking today about how I often gaslight myself into thinking I'm insane when I know that I'm not. At least I think I'm not. But but yeah,
Very
I
sane
try
statement, folks.
I'll try one without, the Magic Garters and Keldeo, because I don't care that the Keldeo isn't destroying everything every game. The fact is that forcing a water and fighting resist on every team is not a good thing, and I think it's too good for what it is. But I recognize that there are bigger issues in the tier. But if you address these bigger issues, then of course Keldeo becomes nuts. I also don't have an aversion to banning a lot of things. I think that is a decidedly non-competitive view to have. Yeah, so that's basically it. So one without spikes maybe, and one without the usual suspects, but this time I would not free Tornadus Therian, because that was admittedly me being a goofball.
I feel like there's this aversion to temporarily trying out a format with different rules just to see how it goes, but maybe in the case of Gen 5 where there's so much debate, like, why don't we try out this guy's idea of what would be good, or this guy, like, why not, like, host it's just a tournament, get some data, see how people think, that might inform how we could do things. Like, why not,
Yeah, there have been cases of this, like recently when they were talking about freeing Ho-Oh and or Celebi in GSC. We have some actual tournament data. The problem is, I don't have an issue with it, as a jumping off point anyway, but some people think that information is completely worthless unless, because it's not a tournament that the best players are giving their all to, or even signing up for. So therefore, who cares? Which I don't think is completely fair for a number of reasons. But people say, well, the only way to motivate the best players to play is give it a trophy or give it money, and people are not going. We're not going to be hosting big money tournaments to see if a Reuniclus-less Gen 5 OU would be good. Nor are we just going to test that in SPL gung-ho. Matter of fact, most of the big tiering decisions, or at least a couple of big tiering decisions of the past 9 years, ever since the unprecedented testing of the chlorophyll-less Excadrill reintroduced Gen 5 OU metagame, it's been done in major tournaments. It was done in World Cup 2015 because the proponents behind the idea, McMegan and Ojama, they were like, there's no way of getting good data. You just have to try it in the biggest tournament. That's the only way to see how it will really affect the game. And then we tried something similar with Latias being reintroduced to DPP, and then that was revisited afterwards and so on. And yeah, so there are arguments like that. Oh, we can't do it because it might destabilize the next tournament. And then you kind of come to this really dumb standstill where, oh, well, none of the ways we could test this will really prove anything. But you can't test it in a big tournament because that will destabilize the tournament potentially, which I think is very silly. Because, it's not like we're testing, it's not like we're throwing Genesect into OU. And yeah, so the only solution left would be, to start hosting giant money tournaments with X Pokemon banned or unbanned or whatever. But yeah, so I think the fact that we have to move past this tiering policy thing, and yeah, I don't know where, because I'm not fighting for it on the front lines as I might have years ago, but I am following it because I'm still attached. Especially, I'm following the stuff in DPP too, and even vaguely, GSC and Advance, and the stuff that's being thrown around there.
Yeah, Gen 4's been interesting recently. There was controversy about Frostlass getting banned, and I think I'm on the side of like...
That was so ridiculous.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's a perfect example of bureaucracy coming before... it's like, oh, well, the rules say this. It's like, well, do they have to say this? Because are the rules really more important than the game? I mean, I understand the fear of the slippery slope. Oh, we can't just kind of edit the game to be whatever we feel like. We have to have some sort of policy precedent. It's like, well, the policy is clearly not working. It's messing up the game pointlessly, so we can change it a little. And just to die on the hill of the policy has been written in stone and will never be changed. I mean, give me a...
Yeah, for context, folks, Frostlass is banned from Gen 4 OU because it has the ability Snow Cloak, which grants evasion in hail. And so there were teams built around abusing Snow Cloak, I guess. But I think what people take issue with is that there could have been a complex ban put in place to preserve Frostlass on non-hail teams, because it was used in that context, like just as a regular lead, as a spike setter with a unique speed tier and options like Destiny Bond and unique typing. And it's quite a cool Pokemon. It's Ice Ghost. It has unique value there. So people were just upset at losing that option for the sake of keeping the ban simpler and just banning they banned Snow Cloak, not the Pokemon. But you could have just banned the combination of Frostlass and Hail together, which would have preserved one more option. And there's no, like, everyone in the community wants, I mean, most people in the community would like to preserve Frostlass, I think.
Yeah, the only people who really want Frostlass as a whole gone are people who love the rules above all else. These are the people who were saying when Sandvale and Baton Pass were broken, it's like, oh, well, Gliscor is a problem in both. You got to get rid of Gliscor. Like, are you... I think it's ridiculous. So, yeah, fighting bureaucracy is one of life's greatest challenges, and Pokemon prepares you for this. It's actually been a blessing for me, because now whenever I face bureaucracy in real life, I'm not saying it isn't infuriating at times, but I just think, this still isn't as bad as Smogon tiering policy.
We're well prepared, I guess, folks.
No, I'm not even kidding. Like, I have such a high tolerance for nonsense in real life, because once you've dealt with, arguing with people about Pokemon tiering, you can do anything. That's
damn true.
Yeah.
I think there was a question related to this. Someone asked. We've kind of answered it. It was from Salty Ape. Here it is. He asks, do you have any criticisms of the way Smogon tiers are handled in general, with stuff like quick bans, community surveys, suspect tests, etc.?
Oh, well, that's like that's usually current gen, right? The survey.
Yeah, that's talking about current gen stuff, and you could argue that current gen's being handled kind of alright, because it's reaching a point of stability, I think, Gen 9. But like, they've kind of gotten rid of most of the problems.
You tell me. Yeah, I think I don't really have much of an opinion on the current gen stuff. I guess maybe I would say, in general, I think this applies to current gen and other gens, that I think tiering should be a lot more aggressive, and I have a concrete example for why I know this works. In Gen 6 UU, Coco Loco, great username by the way, was made the leader of UU, and he could pretty much tier it however he wanted. And he came up with this system where at the beginning of the metagame, you throw out anything that is even remotely broken. Because so much of
Yeah, I
metagame
spoke with
time.
NJMP on the Gen 9 Council who wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it would be great. I think it's phenomenal because so much of a metagame's time as a current gen is spent fighting over, is this obviously broken Pokemon actually broken or not? And you know how many examples I could throw at you here? I mean, Aegislash and XY, good lord. So and
True.
the Genesect, Black and White, Garchomp, Diamond Pearl, all that, because people like their toys. And generally, I am, I guess, distrusting of the general player base's desires, only because I know there are so many players out there who have said, I want to keep Garchomp and Diamond and Pearl because I love using it. I don't care that it's broken. That has happened so often. Tornadus Therian in Black and White, that was another one. People make up, oh, actually, it's not broken because insert terrible Pokemon that checks it once before Stealth Rock destroys it. Like, give me a break. So I realize I'm coming off as kind of aggressive here, but in a competitive game, then, when you're dealing with the health of the tier. So to get back on track, the point being that you throw out anything that's even remotely broken because so much of a metagame's time as the current gen is spent, with unstable metagames, with volatile metagames, as you scramble to answer these Pokemon that you eventually discover are not actually that reasonable to deal with, especially when they're paired together. Like Genesect alone was ridiculous, but Genesect and Tornadus Therian and Deoxys Defense, Landorus Incarnate, like all these at the same time, it was absolute mayhem. This happens every generation. So the Coco method, you take out everything that's even remotely broken and you throw it out. If something else pops up that's broken that you didn't throw out at first, then obviously you look at that too. Not a problem. Because the whole thing is that you have the freedom to liberally tier things. You don't have to wait for. That was another thing. He did not have to wait for however many percent of the surveyed player base, approved of it or not. So, and then what you do, you keep these banned Pokemon out forever. You slowly test them one by one. Because again, that cumulative effect of having to deal with all the Genesects and Torntherians and whatever at the same time, that might be too much. Individually, they might be okay. So you see, are they broken or not? Okay, well, it turns out Thunderous Therian was super broken in Gen 6 UU, so you throw that back out. Fine. Now bring in the next broken thing. Oh, well, that actually wound up not being so bad, so that stays. And so on and so on. And eventually you arrive at a point where Gen 6 UU was a very balanced metagame. And then, of course, after the fact, Conkeldurr wound up being broken, and you banned it. And it's great. The metagame, I mean. So you see where I'm going with this. So I fully agree with NJNP that, I mean, there was even recent controversy around the whole gouging fire thing, where certain experienced players were saying this thing is not a problem and had to argue with people who did not know what they were talking about. And this was a good chunk of public opinion, that gouging fire was busted, even though, the competent players, and I'm sorry to, sound mean, I guess, but, the better players were saying this is just a kind of get good scenario. And it is demonstrated by insert 50 million examples here. I've really enjoyed keeping up with that thread, by the way. And then it was just a matter of, well, who are you going to listen to on these terms? This has been a debate as long as Smogon Tiering has been around. So, Gen 4. And like the final suspect of Generation 4 was not voted on by the masses. The first ever Smogon Council was created. It was, I think, 9 players, and they came together to vote on whether to ban Salamence or not. And it was like an 8-1 vote in favor of ban. So yeah, that kind of, I think suspect texts are good generally, but at the same time, figuring out who to let qualify for, or how strict to make the qualifications, I should say. That's I leave that to someone else. But I generally like, a more restrictive option for whose voice is listened to, because like with all due respect, players who can't figure out how to play the game shouldn't have the ability to weigh in on tiering decisions. And I also don't think we should, and in that same vein, having to wait for the approval of people who why do we need your approval, player who can't get out of the 1200s, for example, which again, there's nothing wrong with being bad at Pokemon, by the way, or not being able to get past a certain stage on the ladder. I shouldn't say that. I should make that extremely clear. But do you see what I'm getting at? It's not, you are a bad person. Just because I say that specifically because I know there are people who get way too wrapped up in things and then conflate you are bad at Pokemon, therefore you are a bad person. No, it's just a matter of, I feel like I'm repeating myself, so I'm going to stop myself there.
I think it's interesting, like, I've made a bunch of videos about each suspect test that happens in Gen 9, and it invites a lot of comments from casual players who often aren't very involved in the tier, but just like this, like the evil empire of Smogon banning something is this big injustice, or why don't we just adapt, or I don't know. I guess you got to understand that competitive Pokemon is a very unique thing, where there isn't really another competitive community that has a system like this, because frankly most competitive games are designed with more thought by the developer. At least, like, we play the singles format, which is not considered in their balance whatsoever. Since the beginning, there's been mechanics that break singles, like sleep, evasion, that something has to be done about for it to be a healthy experience. So I think it's just a weird thing to understand for the average person, maybe, that we need this at all, and that like our game has this system of like all these rules. I don't know. But there's that aspect of it.
I see what you mean. Yeah, but once you get into the people who should know better, the experienced players who still have this like very, very conservative, just adapt mindset, I could throw that argument at literally anything that's ever been banned. It's not very substantial. And so I also think that, having to seek this kind of approval, this populist kind of approval, is really damaging, because if anything, we banned whatever we banned, Volcarona just now. I don't know how people feel about that, and people go, oh, they banned too many things. And if anything, people who are in my camp go, we're not banning enough. We're not banning close to enough. And the ability of Coco's system to just, I think it really, really worked for Gen 6 UU. And when you have a current gen, you are still figuring things out. And a part of why it's so difficult to figure out is because there's so much instability centering around all these broken things existing simultaneously. I remember something McMegan once said. People were once debating on how to preserve Baton Pass in some form a long time ago. And McMegan had the very good insight of, okay, let's get rid of Baton Pass entirely and then like revisit it later. No tournament is going to suffer because you did not allow a threat that might not be broken. And the competitive integrity of the tournament should be, that should be the most important thing. Now, and if this thing winds up not being broken, we have reason to believe it's not too broken later on, we can try it. But it is much preferable to have a tournament without it and then bring it back later, as opposed to having a tournament suffer because this broken thing was running around. You follow? So that's where I'm coming from with this. There weren't really periods of UU in Gen 6 where the metagame was suffering because look at this insanely broken thing that's running around, ruining the game. Matter of fact, the UU community was very, very, positive about the tier. I always thought it was funny how in every generation, the OU player base at large hates OU, and the UU player base at large couldn't be happier to be playing UU.
Yeah, UU tends to be the better experience in most generations.
So, and I think a lot of it comes from the fact that they are not held to the same standards as OU, and they are more able to get rid of things they don't like. So, or I don't like, they don't like. I should rephrase that because someone will hear that and go, "Oh, well, see, they just get rid of things they don't like." It doesn't work like that. There are plenty of things I don't like that I don't think are broken. Things that are damaging to the metagame, to keep it professional.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think look, I don't have an opinion on terrestrialization. Some players whose opinions I really respect tell me, look, it's a skillful thing, so I'll take their word for it. I'm hesitant, obviously. I'm wary about something as extreme as that, but I get it. But in the world where Terra is broken, and I know there are plenty of top players who do believe that it is broken, the facts, I mean, you're never going to satisfy anyone either way. That's not the issue. I'm not worried about that. In the world that terrestrialization is just fundamentally broken, a la Dynamax, not that it's as broken as Dynamax, but in the same vein, it is something that needs to be dealt with. I don't know that you could still get away with actually banning it simply because you wouldn't have enough of the popular vote saying we want to get rid of this, because they're not saying it's broken. It's like, oh well, I like it, it's fun, and just adapt, and that ruins the game for the players who are playing it at the highest level. It's like, oh well, is the game only for the players at the highest level? It's like, look, if someone's not going to play the game because X is banned, then I find the idea of chasing this fictional competitive player who doesn't play the game because we might ban something, to be much less of a pressing concern than the tournaments that are actively, concretely ruined because the metagame was just plagued by something completely ridiculous. So, you don't suffer for having something banned. Within reason, I'm sure if you ban the wrong thing, then the metagame will collapse. But ideally, you don't ban that thing. And the thing is, you can undo it. So I guess it's an issue with the bureaucratic process and everything. And I'll stop repeating myself now because I think I've made the points very clear. But yeah, that's basically what I think about it.
Yeah, and I'm glad there is some sort of system where it's cool that we're able to play these metagames that are organized by this entity. You can debate all you want about your own personal beliefs, but I think it's not too useful to get too angry about it and just enjoy. Because there's something for everyone, even if, like, we're talking about Gen 5OU, you literally don't even have to play Gen 5OU, and most of the people who complain about this stuff don't play it. So, let them talk amongst themselves, do what they want.
Yeah, the only reason I get heated about Gen 5OU, I also follow the controversy of Gen 8, and it's like I don't really have a strong opinion on that, but Gen 5, I spent a lot of time on, so I'm invested. So, and I know how great it can be, which is why it frustrates me. Yeah, but there's so many metagames out there that I think the ultimate way on how to do it is just, when you feel frustrated, vent for 5 minutes or less, and then move on. It's not worth having the veins pop in your forehead and your blood boiling and all that.
That's damn true. We can move on to a more positive discussion, perhaps.
Absolutely.
You recently did a ranking of every OU format, and Gen 4 was at the top. And we talked about this before. I've interviewed you before, and you said that Gen 4 was your favorite. I'm an advocate for Gen 3, but I think that something funny is that people fixate on something I say, which is that, you could use anything in Gen 3. I think it's not exactly true. People kind of take words out of my mouth there. Because Gen 3, I think what I like about Gen 3 is actually that you can't use anything. There is a healthy center of these top tier Pokemon, but what's good about it is that they're all very cool Pokemon that are healthy, not too overwhelming, and customizable, Something like Swampert in most teams is going to be your physical wall. That's just the truth. But Swampert is kind of not just one Pokemon. There's defensive Swampert, offensive Swampert, a million moveset options, EVs, spreads you could use. Why do you need a different Pokemon? You got Swampert. It's perfect. But I think that if people want a metagame where you actually can use a wide variety of different strategies, and there's a lot of different things that are viable, they should play Gen 4, in my opinion. I think Gen 4 might be what people are looking for, because Gen 4 does have a huge amount of variety in it.
Gen 4 has that thing where I think it is similarly restrictive, like Gen 3, because you cannot just use everything, and that's a good thing. I mean, there's more than enough creativity to go
I
around.
mean, in a literal sense, you
Uh,
can't use like
yeah.
Pikachu or whatever, but
Yeah, I just mean like in the sense of, oh, this NU Pokemon is actually going to be good. It's like, no, Magmortar is not actually SPL material, unfortunately, as cool as it is. But I mean more in the sense of, I think Gen 4 is very conducive to creativity because in Gen 3, it's all about Skarmory and friends. And no matter what always happens, you can look at all the tournament games in the world. When the players really, really, really need to win, the odds are Skarmory is coming out on at least one side, if not both. So it's the most dependable. Everything centers around it, and even prepared teams struggle against it because Skarmory is just that good. And it's because the power of defense is such that the power level is not so high so that you can consistently blast through offense as much. That's why Skarm and friends are so good. Now in DPP, defense is still very, very good, don't get me wrong. But on average, the much higher power level, higher base power moves, choice specs, Life Orb, new stronger Pokemon like Heatran, the options are there to where you can bowl someone over with offense much more consistently than you can in Gen 3, in my opinion. So anyone who's looking to use, not Charizard, because Charizard's great in Gen 3, but like Charizard used to be a very creative pick that you would use to get an advantage against the metagame. Anyone looking for that equivalent in Gen 4, there's plenty of options, just because Charizard is not just good because it's strong, but because it has a lot of different traits. In terms of raw power, it's actually quite outmatched, but it's all its other traits that make it as good as it is. And in Gen 4, those options increase, so you can do a lot of really cool stuff, not just offensively, but defensively as well. Like last year, there was a lot of use of Donphan in serious play, and it's a great Pokemon, like a genuinely really good Pokemon. And there's so many examples like that. So I think Gen 4 is very conducive to what people are looking for. Not to say that Gen 3 doesn't have an abundance of that kind of dynamic as well, but
it is
people
more
look
you're
at Gen...
pressuring specific targets, like beating down the Swampert, beating down the Skarmory. In Gen 4, I guess there's more
Exactly,
variety,
yeah,
and like there are different defensive cores. There's more Pokemon, there's more tools that they have,
yeah.
so it's a bit more dynamic. Me personally, I like having a sense of structure and like the same few Pokemon, because those Pokemon are cool to me, and but
The structure is good. The structure, if there wasn't that sense of structure, it would just be chaos and there wouldn't be any order at all. But every single Pokemon metagame, every single one, no matter how conducive to creativity or diverse or anything, there will be a best. And once people figure out
yeah.
what that best is, that best being the most consistent, it will be spammed and that will become the center of the metagame. And you will see that a lot. Every metagame, you can name any metagame that is praised for its diversity and creativity. I'm like, sure, but you do know that the most reliable on average is going to be this. So that doesn't mean you can't be extremely creative. Of course, there's so many options, so many good options, I should say. That's what you really care about. What you can bring viably, what you would bring. Here's a good benchmark. If you would bring it to a tournament game, a serious tournament game, a team tournament game, because in individual tournaments, who cares if if you're okay with letting yourself down, then it's fine. I think it's actually kind of lame when people bring garbage to individual tournaments and give others free wins effectively, but that's their right. But in team tournaments, if you do that, you don't get to play. So everyone brings their best to the team tournaments, and you don't want to let your teammates down either. So if you would bring it to that kind of game, that's good. But if you wouldn't, then it's not really worthwhile.
So that confirms that Lunatone is a metagame staple, because as we all know, Super Epic Ampharos brought Lunatone to SPL. So
yeah, but Super Epic Ampharos also brought Electrode. So there are always some players who are accepted.
Electrode is considered.
I should say, if you would bring it consistently. Bringing it once is not the same thing as bringing it consistently. Also, I should mention, those were very early in the tournament. You know, in a team tournament where it's going to be 9 weeks and you play no matter what, then not every week is going to be life or death. This has to be the
Yeah,
most
yeah.
optimal team ever. And you notice even the creative players, when the season gets more on the line, you know, the later weeks, the week 9, the semifinals, the finals, those teams get a lot more standard. You know, I have all the respect in the world for Super Epic Ampharos as a player, but compare her teams from early in the tournament to her teams later in the tournament. You know, early on it's Electrode and Lunatone, and I don't know if Rapidash was brought again. I know that was using Callus. That was an individual tournament though. But let's say SPL. Early on, Electrode, all that stuff, and then later on it's Skarm, Gengar, Arrow. You know, so I mean, I'm not saying you can't get creative with Skarm, Gengar, Arrow. Of course you can. Getting creative with standard teams is one of the best ways to be creative because it catches your opponent off guard. But yeah, you see what I mean.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
And it's a good point. But
people get hung up about I mean, I know we play this game for fun and everything, but I've seen so many players ruin themselves because they just wanted to mix it up for the sake of it. And it wasn't for a competitive edge. It was just, oh, I think if I bring this, it'll be too predictable. It's like, predictable in what? You bring Zapdos every game in GSE. What's the opponent going to do about it? So
yeah, that's something I have done as a competitor. You try to bring a new team just for the sake of wanting
bringing
to
a new
be.
team is good it's good if you like the team and you know that it's good. It's not good if you are forcing yourself to use some junk. And I've fallen prey to this. You force yourself to use some junk just because it's unlike what you usually like. I mean, there's a fine balance. You can't be super predictable all the time. Of course, I would never argue against that. But you also can't make yourself bring junk just because it's unexpected.
Yeah, I think with those things, it's a gut feeling. Like sometimes you kind of know that the team you're bringing you're not super comfortable with it. You're not super confident in it. Yeah, but you bring it anyway just because some sense of like you need more variety. But sometimes you'd be literally better off just bringing something you brought before that's solid.
I think our tournament structure plays into that a lot. And I mean, you mentioned we have a unique player base in that we have a lot of players who don't see the need to, suspect or ban things at all. You know, but those are the casual players, so they at least have an excuse. What I find a million times more embarrassing are the experienced tournament players who openly decry best of 3 as a superior format. That genuinely blows my mind.
Oh, people who prefer best of 1?
Yeah. Did you not know about this?
I've heard of this in
No,
SPL.
it's like a whole thing. Like suddenly, if you prefer best of 3 for something like SPL, you are in the minority. You will get laughed at by. It's like, what do you mean best of 3? You know, it's like.
Yeah, look, I don't want to ruffle any feathers really, but I've never loved this SPL format as a test of skill. You know, if you look at something like Melee, they have a side format called like Crew Battles, which is a team format, and that's viewed as kind of a novelty. And the main game is, individual singles tournaments. I feel like we give a lot of prestige to the team tournaments.
We do, yeah, which is
a bit weird because it's a 1v1 game. I find that odd.
I know the arguments against it. I have to make a video about this, but the arguments against it, like, oh, it's already a team tournament. Why would you want best of 3? It's like, well, it's more of an accurate team tournament if each individual result is more accurate. And then you have the absolutely embarrassing thing of, oh, best of 3 doesn't even make it more competitive. Or perhaps the most embarrassing is it doesn't make it more competitive. It doesn't make it sufficiently more competitive to justify the extra effort. To which I'm going to sound like such a boomer right now, and I apologize, but whatever happened to get good? Like, it literally, the argument from established players are, I don't want to put the extra work in, / I don't think I can make enough good teams. And it's blowing my mind. I genuinely feel like I'm getting psyoped. You know, like people, or then there are people who say, oh, best of 1, oh, there's team matchup variants, so best of 3 is just, more team coin flipping if it's in the same tier. Good Lord. So that's why I think, to go on the previous thing, I the last time I played SPL last year, I brought my most hated team style in advance, physical offense. I think it is a horrible team style. I brought it literally just out of paranoia of getting my usual stuff counter teamed, because I know there are people who, and I guess this is always going to be a thing as well. I'm not saying best of 3 deletes it, because people who want to fish will fish. And I think that's pretty embarrassing too, but that's a whole separate subject. But in best of 1, it's a lot easier to fish. I don't know how anyone can deny that. The specificity of the fish works a lot more if you don't have to time the fish. In a best of 1, there's only the one time you have to do it, as opposed to having to run the certain fish into a certain matchup in 2 or 3 games. Anyway, yeah, so I brought it just out of paranoia of something extreme like that happening, which is a lot more difficult to pull off in best of 3. Not to say that you shouldn't, have sharp team building either way, be aware of your own tendencies and whatnot. But when the extremes start coming out to play more often, that's when Pokemon really starts getting ruined for me. And that's regardless of format, but I mean, best of... Yeah, I don't know. Best of 3 is just so... It feels like people arguing with people who are telling you the sky is green, Like, I don't know how much more... Like, it's either willful ignorance that best of 3 is competitively better, or it's people saying, but I don't want to take it this seriously. I just want to have fun. It's like, okay, well, then we just accept that we are playing, this is the circus. It's not a serious tournament.
Like, I would be down maybe for best of 1 team tournaments, but it's the fact that they're treated with that level of prestige that confuses me.
Yeah,
where SPL is the be-all, end-all of singles tournaments for the year, but could you argue that other tournaments are more competitive? I don't know.
I don't even get the whole best of 3 is harder thing. I think best of 3 is easier, because anyone who is worth their salt in terms of making teams, and you have a matchup to prepare for, you never just make one team. And if you just make one team and it's too hard for you to make more than one team, then I will just say, get good. I don't know how suddenly the tournament has to be dumbed down because the player isn't good enough for such a regular standard.
Yeah, I don't know.
Especially because what about the individual? In a team tournament, you have teammates to help you too. And in an individual tournament, oh no, best of 3 is fine. You can be, good Lord. And the fact is, every time I play SPL, the last several times I've played, it has been a challenge to narrow a team down for best of 1. And then last year I played in Jirachi's DPP Invitational Tournament, and it was so much easier. I still had more teams that I could possibly use in 2 iterations of the tournament, which even in a best of 3. And it was still much easier to select the teams because one game is not going to decide everything. And it was never a challenge to make, and I'm not the only person who says this, by the way. There are plenty of other people who do not have issues making good teams regularly, especially if we're talking, if it's current gen, okay, I understand it's more volatile. I'm not talking about current gen. I'm talking about old gens, which are stable, which are not figured out insofar as there's a correct way to do them, but insofar as you know what you're dealing with. You're not figuring it out on the fly. And if you're an experienced player in this generation, it should not be difficult to have a bunch of different teams you like. In fact, it should be expected, I should hope. A bunch of different teams you like, each week. And maybe you recycle them once in a while. That happens in individual tournaments. No one ever seems to have an issue with that. But it's also not difficult not to. So, I think it's...
I think what you also got to consider is the experience of the casual viewer. And I think ideally we should want the casual viewer...
About the casual
no,
viewer?
I think from the sense of... like the SPL format.
You off, but just hold that thought, please, because the one thing I just want to say is the casual viewer, shouldn't they want to watch more high-level Pokemon?
No, that's what I'm saying. Is that I think that like we have the channel Revival tournaments, and we've been covering SPL just because it's the biggest tournament happening recently, or it's over now, but and so many comments are very confused about the format. It's hard to follow. There's like a team playing in multiple generations. I don't know how, like I've been playing Pokemon Showdown for over a decade at this point, in Pokemon Online or whatever. I can't follow the SPL format. I don't know who's winning at what time. I just look at the games in a vacuum. Like, let me look at some replays and, H-Cloud versus Megamegan, whatever. I don't know, like how do you follow who the hell's winning at what time? I'm amazed that people can follow it. And if I can't follow it, how the hell is the average Joe going to follow it? And they're like, why is this best of 1? Who's the Circus Maximus Tigers? Who's playing who? And then how does this lead into the next week? It's kind of just a bunch of games in a vacuum, and it's very difficult to follow. Whereas why don't a regular tournament is logical, this guy plays this guy, it's best of 3.
It has God, what was I gonna say? Oh, it's that yeah, there's another argument that's thrown around by people who should know better. Although I think people who should know better I might have to rephrase that, because expecting people to know better is just, that sounded very arrogant. But I'm sorry, I've had enough of. Smogon has prepared me for the real world very well, and in the real world, if you expect someone to be competent, then you will also be let down. On average, anyway. I'm sure. Anyway, so people who are around long enough to where you'd think that maybe they wouldn't think this, but they also say things like, "Oh, if it's best of 3, there's too many games. It worsens the spectator experience." Like, yeah, I want to see less M Dragon versus McMegan. Thank you very much. I
Do people
love it
really
when they
say
just
that?
have the
Because I
one.
have a lot of data to the contrary, where I have so many comments say like, why is this best of 1?
I mean, I don't know. I personally think
That's
the anti
crazy.
best of 3 this to be a little confrontational, I guess. I think the anti best of 3 sentiment, because when best of 3 was introduced as a concept on Smogon, nobody was complaining about it at all. This is a new development. And I think the anti best of 3 thing is the player base largely stagnating and just wanting to go through the motions without having to put in effort. Because half the arguments are literally, I don't want to put in more effort. It doesn't, the game's not rewarding enough for that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and
And
I mean, there was literally, and this post was made by a friend of mine, so I do not have a vendetta. And I'm sorry, Auntie, if you hear this, but this was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. Where he said, okay, maybe it's not stupid, but it was definitely, I don't know, I'll let you decide what it is. But he literally said people don't want to put effort into SPL, they just want to hang out with their friends. Most of the good players have their trophy already. They don't want to put actual effort in. I'm like, oh, so we're just dropping all pretense of this being a competitive tournament. This is just, the dog and pony show at this point. We put the big names there and we ooh and ah at them, and then we, laugh at how horrible that best of 1 experience was because one crit ruined it. And Jesus Christ, I also find it hilarious. While I'm being confrontational, I guess. This happened a couple of years ago, and it happened again this year. There were so many players who were PMing me during SPL, dude, you're a tournament director, you gotta fight for best of 3 in this in SPL going forward. I can't handle this best of 1 thing anymore. I keep losing games off the stupidest thing, and I don't have a chance to fight back because best of 1 and Pokemon does stupid things, variants, all that. The time comes around for the best of 3 thread, and they are quiet. And then, and I honestly, I was a little vindictive this year. Maybe vindictive isn't the right word, but I did enjoy, there were people who were clowning on, oh, haha, you want best of 3, you think prep is stupid, whatever. And then these same players got absolutely rocked in SPL. And a lot of it was, stupid best of 1 matchup variants or 1 flinch ruined the game or whatever. And I took a little bit of sadistic pleasure and watching them not have a chance to fight back. It's like, oh man, best of 1 sucks. And yeah,
there's a bit of confusion about
let
what
me put it this
SPL
way.
is even supposed to be, or who it's supposed to be
Yeah,
for.
let me put it this way. I have very, very, very rarely felt that I got truly robbed in a best of 3 series. But in
Yeah.
best of 1, I mean, look, you can always play better even in best of 1, of course. But it's, yeah, I don't know. So that's me. That's been my vent on this subject. Remember, venting
Yeah.
is good. Venting, I don't think it's good when people keep their feelings bottled up. And yeah, so another life lesson from Pokemon. I'm preparing my life lessons Pokemon teaches you video. I think it will be a big hit. I hope so, anyway, because I have a lot of thoughts.
I'll check that one out. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we can be grateful for Smogon and all it provides, but you got to be critical too. We say these things out of a love for the game, first and foremost, right?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest things to be grateful for, that it prepares you for people's less rational, meaner side.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. I think I have a, I guess, a little bit of a distaste for. Let me phrase this in a way that doesn't make me sound like a raging misanthrope. Misanthrope, sorry. Because I don't like generally have an immensely negative view of humanity or anything like that. Because I think
Oh, here we
like
go,
that kind of
folks.
view is no. I promise it's fine. Because I think that having an overly negative view of humanity is overly simplistic in and of itself. You know, like it's way too easy to say, oh, everyone sucks, people are stupid, people are mean, people are selfish, people are cool. You know, that's just as dumb and insubstantial as the opposite. But I do have a certain frustration, let's say, with people who have this like willful naivete over the idea that, oh, I couldn't possibly believe that someone might be that level of selfish or that level of stupid or that level of cruel. You know, like this happens. Like I have a friend who will, like, if nothing else, like you have to fight tooth and nail to convince them that yes, this person is actually trying to screw you over. You know, and that stuff really frustrates me because I like to think that I don't immediately jump to the worst about people. That you know, I've defended my share of unscrupulous characters before, looking for the nuance because I'm all about the nuance. But God, when it just drives me absolutely nuts when because it seems very obvious to me when someone is being any of the traits that I just described and just going, oh, I'm sure it's not as bad as all that. Like, good lord. So and Smogon, I mean, I think I had this kind of thing before I really got into Smogon, but Smogon definitely reinforced that because the way people behave online is it's not like it exists in a vacuum separate from real life. It is very much an extension of what people actually are. Now, it's not the exact same thing, of course, and we could get into a whole
You
thing
gotta make
over
some
that.
video about like how Smogon is a microcosm of society or
It
something.
really is. No, dude, I'm not even kidding. Like, it's
It
not the
is,
exact same thing, of course, but I mean, like,
yeah, it's
people
parallels.
backstabbing each other to get, higher positions of power on the forums and to maintain policy. They don't care about the policy. They just, feel like the feeling of power. Like, what does this sound like to you? Does this sound like real life politicians in government or what? Like, do you think that the people in charge of old gen tiering policy, for example, like they don't even play half the tiers they're talking about half the time. Do you think they are really looking out for the tier's best interests when they are enforcing that we stick to the rules at all costs? Like, no, they like the status quo because they are part of the status quo and the establishment and whatever. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to turn this into like a political manifesto or something, but like the parallels are very much there. So I do think that if you pay attention, you take a lot more from the game than you think. We get into it, oh, it'll be a fun hobby or whatever, and then you wind up with an expanded political consciousness, let's say, or a view of what people are like in terms of behavior, like or like if you can believe that people would backstab you even if they're close to you, or if they're using you because they're social climbers, let's say. How much of that behavior is there? I mean, of course, it's an environment that validates that kind of thing. We get a lot of validation. This actually, more strictly Smogon slash Pokemon related. A lot of the validation comes from other people seeing that you are good at the game, but it sometimes turns into a heroic troller recently described it very well because there was a World Cup debate about the format and people were saying, oh, we don't want old gens because no one will ever beat Solwind in Gen 5 OU. That was a real thing someone
What?
said.
Is
No,
that
I swear that was
really?
a real actual argument someone made. Not every country will be able to field a Gen 5 player
Should
who's capable
Solwind
of
be
beating
suspect
Solwind.
tested, folks?
Dude, they literally said, I hate using the word literally, but it just, I get so passionate. They were saying, it's not fair, and they were literally saying that they would have certain slots to be sacrifices, and so who do you sacrifice up against Solwind? And that is not a new concept, and the rise of cheese over the last 6 or so years, I think, has a lot to do with people realizing that It's like, oh well, we're not going to beat this guy, so we're just going to throw some cheese at him and hope it works, but we weren't going to beat him fair anyway, so no real loss. You expect to lose that game. And then Troller summarized it as, these are people talking about sacrifices. What happened to, I'm going to, ascend and beat that all-time great player, and people will go, wow, look at him. He beat that all-time great player. What a legend. What a great player he is himself, or they are themselves. And now it's just, oh, well, we'll have to sacrifice that player. It'll be a miracle if they win. And it's like, and he described it as the place becoming a social network with the battles kind of like on the side. Like the battles exist to facilitate the narratives or whatever it is. And good lord, speaking of other ridiculous things, I won't say who said this, but this is an all-time great player who respected it. It was very respected, and who I respect in terms of Pokemon more than anyone else maybe. And someone was saying, oh, best of 3 is more competitive, whatever, and he was like, yeah, well, SPL isn't really about that. It's about, you write your own story, you forge an epic narrative, other stuff like that. Like, dude, what are you saying? And then, of course, I was really, okay, I'll stop there. But yeah, so this is the kind of
that's kind of epic, though. You forge an epic narrative. What is he talking about?
No, I added that part. He said the write your own story part, but I expanded that for that. I was gonna say
that's still funny. I like that though.
It's funny. I know I'm hilarious. But yeah, I have no problem believing that someone can be stupid or selfish or whatever. Even an otherwise reasonable, intelligent person, they have, and I'm not perfect. Obviously, I'm very prone to bouts of heightened emotion, but yeah, this was not it.
My gosh, folks, it's like in Dune. I feel like I'm one of the Fremen listening to Paul Atreides radicalizing me before my eyes. We got to put this guy in charge. We're going to put him in charge right now. He's speaking for the people. Let's bring down the entire system, folks. Let's do it.
Yeah, classic Paul. I had an experience like that recently. Not quite like what you're referring to, but I understand.
Well, maybe we should move on from the topic of Pokemon, because it gets intense and it's very serious, and it's.
Yeah, you don't want to take it too seriously, but you also don't want to be one of those people who's just like, oh, I don't care about anything, because then you'll just, that kind of passionless existence, why even play at that point? If you don't care, then you're just going through the motions and clicking the buttons and, yeah, I guess my brain needs this boost from when I OHKO that thing, but who actually cares about any of it? No, you can't do that. Pick something to care about. And stand for something, for God's sake. Look, another life lesson. God, I'm just full of these.
Yeah, I've had my fair share of passionate arguments about like Ninjask or whatever. But anyway,
God almighty.
Move it on. Let's not get into that one.
That nonsense, Jesus. Not you. I mean, in general. How can someone? Good lord.
We can't get into that one. We'll be here for hours.
No.
Anyway, a more lighthearted question from Justin Fabella. What is your favorite fast food chain?
I don't have one.
You don't like fast food usually?
No, I stay away from fast food, unfortunately. No, what am I unfortunately? No, it is a very conscious choice to avoid fast food.
Okay, that's probably for the best. to be honest.
You know why though? It's not that I don't have a sweet tooth. God, I definitely have a sweet tooth. It's just that most fast food, I feel so terrible after eating it, and it's not so good that it justifies it. Like I'll every once in a while I'll be like, you know what? I'm in good shape. I've been working out. I'll get myself an entire thing of Ben and Jerry's cookie dough. I'll just eat the whole thing at once. But after I eat that whole Ben and Jerry's thing, I do not feel, terrible afterwards. And I think the main difference is that if you get like KFC or something, I don't remember the last time I got KFC or McDonald's, but whenever you do, then I just feel like the oil and the grease and the fried fat like in my veins. And it feels disgusting. And I mean, in terms of something like McDonald's, I don't even think it tastes good. I don't even think it tastes good to begin with. I think it tastes like plastic. And there are some others that are like okay, but it's just never, I just don't like it. I like the if I'm gonna get like a burger or something, I would just rather get the non-fast food version. Like I live in Prague and I love Czech food, but I can't even have Czech food all the time because so much of it is so fried. And I'm just like, where's the non-fried version of this? I would love that.
What do you
But
usually
yeah,
eat day to day? Like, you're a chef?
usually I have eggs in the morning a lot. I'm not like a dietitian or a nutritionist or anything, but I try to eat healthy. But I try to get in like a little bit of everything. So, eggs, and I throw in a lot of vegetables, especially if I'm cooking for my girlfriend, because I know she doesn't always eat the same things as me. So, lots of salads and veggies, and more recently things like tofu and tomatoes, which I'm making myself eat, even though I don't like them. Avocado, stuff like that. But I'm most at home with chicken, salmon, turkey, stuff like that. And depending on how you season them, then you can make them taste a bunch of different ways. So yeah, basically stuff like that. And then if I get like hungry throughout the day, I have like a protein bar or something with me, and I just snack on that. And I love sushi a lot. That's I try to not go out for sushi too much because it's not good for the wallet either. But yeah, ever since I started cooking, and I eat a lot of apples too. I'm a big apple guy, big carrot guy too. So yeah, so I generally eat well enough to where I can afford, or I allow myself that occasional, oh yeah, let me just get a Ben and Jerry's, why not? Or whatever it is. And once in a while, I don't eat strictly healthy all the time, but I try to, because otherwise it's so easy. But also it tastes a lot better when you don't have it often, but when you just get in the habit, let me eat out again, let me eat some junk, then so I guess if I had to pick one fast food thing, I gave such a detailed answer, I just can't help myself.
And now we...
I won't help myself, let's say. Because it is a choice. I would say... It's not here in Prague, but if I'm in the States, Five Guys is really good. It's... You know why? Because it's so... Like, it's got all that stuff I just described, but it actually tastes delicious. So you're like, okay, wow, that was really bad for my heart or whatever, but it was worth it, going down. So once in a while. I also really miss, I miss Panda Express too. Their orange chicken was really something.
Well, there you go.
We don't have that here. Yeah, here, if I ever get it, which I rarely do, I don't know, I'll just go to like an Asian place and get some like fried noodles and like chicken. And I'm always like, don't you guys have a non-fried? Just give me the noodles not fried. Yeah, I like pho a lot too, or pho.
I love pho. Yeah. Very good.
So that's my version of fast food.
You get such a detailed answer from BKC of the simplest questions, folks. It's crazy.
It's, look, I'm a big nuance guy. What can I say?
A bit of a genius level thinker. One of the philosophers of our time, BKC.
Look, no matter how hard you work out, what you eat is more important.
Someone asked, the name is Napurehe, what is the best movie from 1986? And I went ahead and Googled 1986 movies. There's some pretty good ones.
Okay, let's see. I think Blue Velvet came out that year. So off the top of my head, that would be my answer. Let me check what else came out in 86, but that was 86, right? Yes, it was. Okay. So, yeah, Blue Velvet would be my choice off the top of my head. I don't know what else
The top grossing movie was Top Gun, which I haven't seen.
Yeah. Nope, not even close.
You got Ferris Bueller's Day Off. That's a pretty good.
I don't like Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I liked it when I was a kid. I haven't seen it in a long time.
I didn't see I didn't see it as a kid,
Okay.
So I'm a lot harsher on it.
Castle in the Sky would be my pick. I love
that's a
it.
good
That's
one.
a great movie.
That's a good one.
That was a pretty good year.
There? Yeah, the 80s were interesting.
Oh, The Fly is a good one. That came out in 86.
Oh, is The Fly 86?
Yeah.
That's okay.
You guys seen that one? The bit of existential horror, folks? You guys like that?
Oh my god, it's the existential horror manifested as the external decay of the flesh. What a film. Jeff Goldblum has never been better.
I agree. That's his best performance.
I'm just skimming through my top ranks here. I see a lot of 85s, 87s, but as far as 86, I think it might just
I think I
be...
sussed out all the noteworthy ones, so the answer will be Blue Velvet, I imagine.
Yeah, let me just search by release here real quick and see what pops up.
Just in case.
Just in case. Around Midnight, that's a really good one. Aliens, Big Trouble in Little China, that's a really fun one.
Oh, true.
And you might like this Australian movie called Dead End Drive-In. That's a really fun one. It has one of the greatest car stunts ever. Down by Law is good. From Beyond, that's a lot of fun. The Hitcher, that's a really, really nasty. The guy from Blade Runner, Rutger Hauer, he's on fire in that. Manhunter's pretty good. And Tarkovsky's The Sacrifice. That's a heavy one. That's really good. I really, really love this French movie called Rosa the Rose, Public Girl, or Rosa la Rose, Public Girl. It's a beautiful, beautiful melodrama. Some of the most one of the most touching scenes in any movie I've seen. Spike Lee, She's Gotta Have It. That's there. One of my favorite slashers, Sorority House Massacre. That's an incredible one. I love that one. The Beekeeper by Angelopoulos. Dead Man's Letters. That's a Russian film. That's a good one. A very fun horror comedy called The Seventh Curse from Hong Kong. John Woo's A Better Tomorrow, and Edward Yang's The Terrorizers. That one's very good. So, yeah, those are my 86 picks. But yeah, Blue Velvet. Blue Velvet is the best one. Yeah.
Emilio asked, what's the state of your movie? How's it going? And is there some way to help with that? Cheers to my favorite YouTuber.
I'm sorry to be so frank, but I appreciate it, of course. The thing is, we have the crew and everything. It literally is just a matter of money. And I know it's very easy. There's what's the indie film advice? It's the budget doesn't make a good movie. It's no, but it really, really helps. We have everything planned. So to answer that question concretely, we are shooting 6 days of the film proper. No more trailers, no more anything. We already shot part of it in December, but that was just one day because that was all I could afford. So now it's been some time. We will have 6 days of shooting in July 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, rest day, and then 13th and 14th. And that will be, I think, about an hour of material. It will be a standalone film. I specifically chose the parts to shoot that would, there's no zombies yet because you have to lay the groundwork first, and it would be also that would be a lot more expensive. The zombie parts are the really expensive stuff. But it is basically a standalone drama, and then obviously we hope to get more to finish it and add the zombie stuff and some other things. But yeah, that standalone version I'm very excited for. I don't know, it'll be an hour, I don't know how long. But that is the one we want to send out to places, not just to hey, give us money to help us finish this, but also to show it as its own film. And I'm very excited to release that. But yeah, we're July is our shooting day. And if anyone is wondering, if you're not familiar with film, why does it take so long? Money, that's why. Number one, money. Number two, people's schedules. People, shoots are planned months and months and months in advance because of how much needs to be organized. If you want it to look good anyway. I mean, yes, I could, call my friends and be like, hey, grab your iPhones. We're going to go shoot something. It's and as much as you think, iPhone cameras are good, it's a lot. If you want it to be a film and not just a pretty good looking YouTube video, then there's a lot going into it. So yeah, I mean, it frustrates me that it takes so long, but I also know that the end I'm very, very confident in the end product of what we're shooting, because it shows that the drama stands on its own, and that then the action zombie elements serve to enhance it afterwards. And I think we will all be invested in the journey of Ryan, which is the name of the main character. And yes, I chose the name Ryan because, well, it's similar to Kevin, first of all, but also, yes, because of Ryan Gosling. I figured there was no sense in, any sort of pretense, like let's dispense with this and just say it how it is.
Is he like a literally me type of character? Is that the thing?
Yeah, but not in a cool way,
Oh, okay.
That comes later. But the literally me characters, they're generally like they have some sort of. I mean, I'm not saying he's like a complete wimp or something. He has his good points, but you don't want to get too bogged down in those like kind of romantic fantasies of, oh, I'm just the misunderstood loner, and there's this one girl who sees me for who I really am, and blah blah blah. That kind of stuff can be very, very pernicious, I think. So yes and no. Most of the literally me characters, like Gosling in Drive and De Niro in Taxi Driver and Gyllenhaal in Nightcrawler, they are not actually supposed to be like role models, but that textually anyway. But
and misinterpreted.
But they are very open to interpretation there. And I mean, I know like the American Psycho thing, like how much more of an absolute lunatic do you have to make this guy for people to not think he's cool? You literally call him a psycho, but
yeah, I mean, like obviously he's a psycho, but he is kind of cool too.
I hate his taste in music so much. I hate it.
Huey Lewis in the News, it's
not that I hate it. It's that his whole taste is so dedicated to the most inoffensive corporate rock out there. He could not be more mainstream in his taste if he tried. And I'm not saying that he has to start listening to, underground demo tapes or something, but, expand your view a little, which I know that's the point of the character. It is making fun of people who, I'm not saying that pop music can't have depth. That would be ridiculous. Depth. I realize I said it like death. I'm not saying pop music cannot have depth and intellectual value and all that kind of stuff. But there are some people who, there is a trend, and not just in music, of people wanting to intellectually justify things that do not have that much intellect to them. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everything is supposed to be Dostoevsky, but you know what I mean? Like, not seeing it for what it is and instead of making it out to be something more, as opposed to expanding their view and seeing, oh, so this is what it can be if you aren't limiting yourself to if you don't have the limitations of mainstream tastes to play to, as part of the whole framework you're looking at it through.
That's an interesting thought, yeah.
Yeah, I think about this stuff a lot.
I'm almost hesitant to say anything because a lot of fan communities for popular artists these days are quite adamant. But I do think that I can get behind that a little bit. But circling back to the movie stuff, I'm looking forward to whatever you put out. It sounds like it's very ambitious and very time-consuming, and I've got respect because it's a labor of love, I imagine. And
oh yeah, we just polished off our shot list the other day, and I was already excited for it, but now I'm really excited for it. So yeah, it's finally all those movies I cram into my brain are paying off. It's like, oh, I do know what this is supposed to be like. Cool.
And it's impressive. It's not easy to make an independent film, folks. My brother recently did a little film shoot at our house. Just a short film for uni, I think. And it seemed like a very complex endeavor. You got to manage all these people, cater for them, organize who's where.
Yeah, no matter how, if you want it to be like a real shoot and not just, a couple friends because that's all you can afford, then even the simplest thing you could possibly imagine, like a scene of two people sitting at a table talking, that is already going to be a lot of work.
Yeah, there's a lot people don't see. And it seems like it makes me admire like great film directors even more. You just have to have such it's like an elite level artist, I feel like, because it's the most complicated medium there is. You're managing all these people. like getting a consistent vision across is so hard, and even
And
yeah,
you have to be very specific with how you, because people aren't going to see it the way you see it in your head unless you really make it so unmistakably, explicitly clear, and that can be kind of a challenge. And
that's what makes you appreciate directors who can subtly convey
yeah,
information like that. It's a brilliant thing.
and this is why Tarkovsky is just the greatest. You know, you look at his movies and you're like, how did he get this to? Unbelievable stuff.
I still have to check him out. I haven't had too much time to like watch a bunch of movies recently. I've been working a lot.
I know. I've been struggling too. I mean, it's good to not. It's not overwhelming. It's good to not overwhelm yourself with movies. I've definitely like burned myself out before, where I wasn't even enjoying it. But yeah, there's a lot of things I really want to see, and I'm just like, oh, it's hard to fit it in right now. But yeah, look, one day soon you will watch Stalker, and you will never see movies the same way again. It is.
I will.
It's a very like stereotypical cinephile answer, like I like Tarkovsky, I like Stalker, but it's just one of those cliches that is a cliche because of how true it is. It is, yeah, it is not without criticism, of course, but to deny how incredible it is, that's just. Let's compare it to Best of Three. Best of Three is so clearly superior that any argument against it is just like personal, whatever the hell.
That's quite the parallel.
That's how much of a fact it is that Stalker is the greatest thing ever.
I remember you enjoyed my little joke that Gen 2OU is the Barry Lyndon of competitive Pokemon formats. That was just a random comment. It was the first slow movie that I could think of.
It's so true. Yeah, especially because most people would rather go to hell than play GSC. Just like Ryan O'Neal would rather go to hell than Dublin.
I think it actually is an apt comparison, though. Barry Lyndon seems like a really slow and boring movie, but it's actually quite... I thought it was quite captivating and exciting, actually.
It is. It's hilarious, when the narrator's like narrating everything and his voice just starts fading out.
Oh yeah. Question from CoolCat27: what is the movie that made you want to make movies? Is there a specific movie that you got more interested in the process behind the screen, or it inspired you to think about those aspects?
Well, I used to want to be a writer. Well, I still do, I guess. Like writing novels and things like that. And then I used to think that movies were like the stupid version of books, because growing up I wasn't allowed to watch many movies, and the movies I did see were mostly like stupid versions of books. Like the easiest example is Harry Potter, right? It's like I would watch it and it's like, well, this is so clearly worse than the book version. But even as I grew up and saw other movies, then there were many I understood the principle, of how not everything that you see in a book is going to make it to the screen. And so I just thought, oh, movies like the dumb version for people who don't want to read, who just want it shown to them, which was a criticism that used to get thrown at movies all the time. And then when I got older and I saw, more movies, more great movies, then I realized that it is not a comparison. I mean, there are, dumb versions, there are dumb movies out there, obviously, but there's also lots of dumb books. And it's not, so you're not supposed to compare the two, but to recognize that movies are their own language, and there are certain things that movies convey way better than books. And of course, there are other things that books convey much better than movies, of course. And then there's always been this debate around movies, like, oh, is it just like a worse version of literature and theater and dance and sculpture and all the others? But it is its own unique thing, and some people boil it down to a distillation of time, let's say, which definitely has some merit to it, like the time image and the movement image and all those other philosophical concepts. Can you tell I read about this stuff a lot? Yeah.
Yep.
I care too much, maybe. But yeah, it can be maybe the most powerful, affecting art form because of its unique strengths. Something like Mulholland Drive, for example, that no other art form can replicate Mulholland Drive. Like, yes, the soundtrack is a big part of it, of course, and the performances, whatever. But the way it all comes together in the unique combination of sight and sound, you know, this is not the only way to look at it, but the way that you almost perfectly replicate directly experiencing something, as you would in real life, um, that is a big part of it. So eventually, to get back to your question, the I realized more that movies had this unique power, and I was like, oh well, okay, well I'll get into movies, but I don't really know anything about directing or camera angles or stuff like that. So I'll just write because I know writing, I know how to write, and movies need good writing, right? An opinion I have since revised. I mean, look, I love movies with good writing, of course, but there are plenty of movies where the quote unquote writing is not in the script, but in the way it is filmed. And whenever someone judges a movie on the screenplay, I want to go insane because yeah, a good screenplay is great, whatever. Yeah, Chinatown, okay, sure, I get it, yeah. But on the other hand, a great script does not mean a good movie. If you gave Chinatown to a bad director, you would have a mildly interesting movie, that's mostly interesting because of its literary elements or its dramatic theatrical elements, not because of how it exists as a film. Chinatown is an all-time great film because of the way it's directed, because of the way its form exists in tandem with the story. They work together. You look far as something like Rashomon and the whole thing. The Rashomon effect, for those who aren't familiar. Have you ever seen an episode of TV where there's like a big event, and a bunch of our main characters see it? Let's say we have four main characters who witness the event. Like, oh my God, at school, John walked into a wall and then someone threw a water balloon at him. And then character number one says, no, that's not how it happened. Here's how it happened. And then they, they film like his version of events. Then character number two says, that's not how it happened. Here's how I see it, and that kind of thing. And the whole thing is that everything is subjective and people have their own perspectives and biases and whatever. That's the Rashomon effect. It comes from the 1950 Japanese film Rashomon. And the Rashomon effect the Rashomon is not an all-time great film just because of this concept. Because you could have this concept, as demonstrated, literarily. You could write this down. The reason that Rashomon is such a great film is that it has this concept, and then it illustrates this concept through its film form. And that is why camera angles and lighting and all those things, they're not just there to look pretty and to trick viewers into being entertained as they watch the colors and shapes flash back and forth on the screen. It's like, wow, that looks nice. No, it's not that. It is the ultimate form of showing you and not telling you. So when you see movies like this, then you become more, attuned to the possibilities of this. So as to what movies did that for me, it wasn't like a, one movie snapped everything into place. Oh, I must direct movies. Because at first I wanted to write because I didn't know more about directing. And then I got really attached to the stuff I was writing. Of course I did. Me and my emotional attachment and my, high level of passion and all that. And the idea of writing something I was so emotionally attached to and giving it to someone else for them to direct, that drove me absolutely insane. It's like, what are you doing? You ruined it, So I decided, oh, well, I guess I better learn how to do it myself. And then slowly I just watched more and more and more, and I learned how to do it myself. So I didn't have like a eureka moment where I watched a movie and was like, oh, I must direct now. But some off the top of my head that would be big in this regard and showing me what this could be as an art form would be, let's see, Logan for sure. Because I saw it when most of my movie experience was, oh, it's something to do with friends, not to take too seriously. And I didn't really have a super close emotional attachment to any. And and I realized through that movie that movies could have this kind of unique emotional impact, and that was really extraordinary. And I've rewatched Logan a bunch. and I've seen, everything that I could, like all the Bergmans and Tarkovskis or whatever, because it's easy to say. I even thought to myself, dude, you are not going to like this movie as much once you've seen more movies. This is just like entry level, babies first, whatever. And every time I rewatch it now, I challenge it. Like, okay, show me if you're still as good as I thought you were, and it lives up to the challenge. So I really think it's a great film, and not just a great superhero film. So yeah, Logan flipped that switch for me. And then a bunch of others were things like Taxi Driver, 8.5, Stalker, Hot Fuzz, actually, because Hot Fuzz, like, wait, this is a comedy, but it's not made by a bunch of idiots who just, stick the camera in front of the actors and let them, gab. Like, this is so I love Hot Fuzz to death.
Yeah, those are some good
Blue.
ones.
Yeah, Perfect Blue is one, and yeah, there are a million others. So
I guess Logan might have been the inciting incident, though.
I think so. Yeah.
That was a good
And the
movie.
call
I haven't
to-
watched it in a while. I watched it in theaters, but I was surprised with it. It's the superhero movie. I didn't expect much of it, but I found it
Yeah, I
quite
know. I
compelling,
watched
actually.
it too. I was like, yeah, you just want it to be decent. It winds up being phenomenal, but it really really holds up. And the final one I will go with is Beau Travail, a French film from '99. It's only 90 minutes long, and it has the greatest ending in movie history. And it is a uniquely cinematic experience.
That's another
The
one
whole thing,
I've
and then
heard
the ending.
of, but I haven't seen. Yes.
It is the greatest. You will not be the same after those 90 minutes. And that's the power of movies. So those are some, and then there were a bunch of others like Do the Right Thing and all that jazz, and but yeah, I'll stop myself there. There's a lot.
Drew T asked, has a film ever significantly changed your life or the way that you view the world? I actually have an answer for that. I'm curious what you might say.
Yes, I'm sure it definitely has, but I don't know what it might be off the top of my head, because it's usually not like a eureka moment, but definitely something that makes me consider things, something that really sticks with you. It's not just that was a really fun time, but God, what's your answer? I'll think of mine.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about how movies can put you into the perspectives of people that are completely different from you. So for me, I was quite young when I watched it. Grave of the Fireflies kind of just like hit me right in the stomach and was like, it kind of woke me up to the realities in the world and actually gave me some very valuable perspective, because you just see this really tragic situation and the reality of like war and stuff. It's just,
dude, if I saw that movie as a kid, I would cry for weeks.
I was
Good
about 17,
Lord.
I think. I was quite young, so
17. I thought you meant like,
yeah,
that's still
when I was
still,
younger. I didn't really know much about
okay,
like
that's still pretty young for, I mean, there's never a good age for Grave of the Fireflies.
I watched it because
Good
it was
Lord.
Studio Ghibli and I was going through a phase of Studio Ghibli. But I didn't expect it to be. And you hear that, that movie makes you cry and all that, but I think there's just such an emotional resonance with that movie.
I think okay, I have some others. Let me just I mean, yeah, okay, there are a lot of options. I don't know if this is the number one choice for me or anything. Okay, well, the other thing I just thought of was Scenes from a Marriage, which Bergman, the TV version, I haven't seen the theatrical version, but the TV version is extraordinary. It wasn't really something new, but it definitely... there have been several cases, like with Scenes from a Marriage, where I watch something and it kind of makes me realize, oh, I'm not the only one in the world who thinks this. I mean, I don't have that like arrogant thought, like I am the only person who has ever thought of this. Not in that sense, but more in the sense of someone else has gone through this specific emotional journey and, given thought to it the same way I have, and to see it put forward so powerfully, it really resonated. But the answer I was going to give is kind of an unusual one, I guess, but stick with me here. It's a French film from 1973 called The Mother and the Whore, And the way I can boil it down to, it's 3 hours long. It's actually, no, I take it back. It's 3 hours 40 minutes long. I saw it in a theater last year because they restored it, and I was like, well, I've heard that's good. I want to see it. And the reason why it really took me, it didn't like blow my mind open, on the spot. It wasn't like, oh my God, I will never see the world the same. But it really stuck with me because the basic premise is that the main guy is this, 20-something guy. He likes art, he likes movies. He's hanging around trying to get laid and, have fun and all that. And he's a little hung up on his last girlfriend, but whatever. But the overall thematic thrust of this movie, let's say, is that he has two girlfriends. Both, they know about each other. They are extremely happy. They know about each other. They like each other. They're fine with him having both of them. They're not going looking for something else. They are totally happy to just have him, and he can do whatever he wants. They give him free reign. He lives with one, and his life is paradise. And even though he has this supposed dream scenario of, I got my two girlfriends and everything is perfect and I can do whatever I want and I can go get laid, and he's still miserable. And yeah, it really, really stuck with me because before, I guess I would say, wow, we're getting deep. Before, I guess I would say, the idea of, you have to be satisfied with yourself, before you can be satisfied with someone else. Someone else will not fix you. Like, I agreed with it in an intellectual way. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understood the concept, and yes, of course, that's correct. But it was very difficult to reconcile it with the emotional side of things, let's say. And that is, a big part of what being a person is about, reconciling your emotional and your, the physical, the emotional, and the intellectual. Putting all those things together in a way that makes sense. Because, our, DNA might say, go out there and, punch that guy in the face because he said something mean to you. And then you have your other side, your emotional side, that, that guy made me so angry. He made me think of this, incident I had a long time ago. I don't like that. I'm going to punch him in the face. And then there's the intellectual side of you is like, dude, do not do that. So that whole dance is what being a person is about. And, with this movie, then the whole, you have to be satisfied with yourself and not just by looking for as many other people to validate you as possible. I think, I kept thinking about it after because I really enjoyed it in the theater. I wasn't thinking about this in the theater, but I was just really taken by how great it was. But then it stuck with me so much. And I was thinking to myself, it started to become more of an emotional reality as well. Once you have experienced that with these characters, so it's no longer just, yes, I know I should be happy by myself and not look for it in someone else, which is a massive struggle for a lot of people. It is something really, it takes a lot of time to get over it, to get through it even. But yeah, I would say, I'm sure there are many others I could point to, but in terms of something very important to me that it really stuck with me and made me really, really think about it more and start, tackling. I like to think I don't shy away from my own feelings, but I was really, diving deep into my own, whatever you want to call it, to try and figure this thing out based on what I had just experienced. So
interesting answer. Yeah, that sounds like an intriguing.
The Mother and the Whore, great movie. I mean, 3 hours 40 minutes, but people binge Netflix shows longer than that all the time. So seek it out. Extraordinary.
Sometimes like weird movies like that can get you thinking. Like Poor Things was a recent one. That's a bizarre premise, but it's
a really good one. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
If you try to describe it to someone who hasn't seen it, they'd probably think you're like a psycho or something.
Yeah,
like,
I know. What is this film you like? What kind of things are you into?
Yeah, that raised a lot of interesting philosophical questions that I was thinking about for quite a while after watching it.
Right. I'll throw in another very quick one. It's a Japanese film from 1968 called Death by Hanging, and it starts out as this complete farce because there's this Korean, I think he's a prisoner of war in Japan, and they try to hang him. and it doesn't work. Like the rope breaks and he survives. And it starts out as like all these bureaucrats running around. Well, what do we do? Do we hang him again? The law says we just hang him once. So I mean, it doesn't say what do we do if he survives. And they can't figure out what to do. And then the Korean guy starts messing with them. And by the end, it turns into this whole like geopolitical treatise on the existence of nations and the morality of our behavior towards our fellow human. And I was just like, what just happened? So I really, yeah, that's another
That sounds great. I like
it's so
Kafkaesque
good. The guy
kind
who
of thing
made it,
about
Oshima, was incredible.
the focus on bureaucracy and stuff like that. I really like movies like that.
It'll resonate with anyone who's ever had the frustrating experience of dealing with smoke and tearing.
Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. Yeah. You ever seen Brazil? That's one of my favorites.
Yes, I have. Brazil is good.
It's like,
I like Brazil.
What if 1984 was mixed with like Smogon?
I like at the end, I mean spoilers I guess, but like when there's the explosions and oh my god it's great, and then you know what happens.
Yeah, that's a spoiler.
Yeah, that was a gut punch moment if there ever was one. I also like how De Niro keeps showing up for like a minute at a time, if that. And he's just like, like a what do you call it? Like a janitor type guy. And he's like, what are you gonna do? And then he just disappears again. Great use
That's
of De Niro.
Hilarious, yeah. This is from What a Hoot, 1185. Good username. What is the most disappointing movie you've ever seen? Have you ever gone to the theater really excited, then been let down?
I actually have an answer for this off the top of my head, because I have a pretty low bar for certain movies. Like I don't go into junk expecting it to be Bergman, but and I do really enjoy a lot of movies that are not highbrow or whatever. I have a lot of thoughts on highbrow versus lowbrow, and how certain highbrow stuff is actually not that highbrow, and how certain lowbrow stuff has a lot of intelligence to it and a lot of merit and all that. But I have no issue with a movie just being dumb fun. As a matter of fact, I wish we would have more of those kinds of movies now. And so when in the summer of 2018, when I went to see The Meg with my friend, I had no expectations. I was like, dude, all I want is for the big shark to eat people, okay? I want nothing more than brainless spectacle from this. I want, and I don't think I'm asking for a lot here. And I was no stranger to watching garbage. Most of what we watched was garbage. And I was slowly growing tired of us watching garbage, and just so we can make fun of it. Like, yes, it's fun to make fun of garbage with your friends sometimes. But, didn't you occasionally have the urge, well, couldn't I watch something that, was actually good? Something that might, fulfill me a little more. So, but yeah, on this evening, we didn't know what to do. So we're like, let's go to the movies. Let's see The Meg, a Jaws ripoff with a huge shark. How bad could it be? Turns out pretty bad. And I hated it so much. And I hated the fact that I paid for it. And it annoyed me so much that I went home from my buddy's place at like 2 or 3 in the morning. And that's when I watched Logan for the first time. Because I had heard it was good. My friend was like, dude, it's like a human drama. It's the real deal. And that's what made me interested. Because, I was like, I could use one of those. We've kind of been cycling through a lot of junk lately. So with that, then I discovered Logan. So I guess I have the Meg to thank for that. But yeah, I really did. I mean, I know it's like an easy target. Like, oh, obviously bad movie turns out to be bad. Shocker. Because that kind of bugs me when people watch nothing but junk. Oh, all this is junk. It's like, well, yeah, what did you expect? But I was let down by the Meg because the bar is so low and it still managed to, fail it spectacularly.
That's disappointing.
Yeah. I guess I was also disappointed by the 2022 Palme d'Or winner, Triangle of Sadness. I enjoyed parts of it, but it was it's one of those movies that, like, I agree with it, a lot of it in principle, but the execution is so self-satisfied and smug and unbearable, and not in a way that serves the film, to the point where it repudiated me. Good Lord.
I didn't see that one. I heard it was like another rich people bad type film.
I mean, yes, but it's not The Menu, It's worth watching. It is very enjoyable in parts, and there's a scene in the middle, like this 15-minute stretch, which I won't spoil for you, but it is one of the funniest things you'll ever see. That I was really enjoying. I mean, it was not blowing me away. I was like, okay, so he clearly thinks he's a modern day Buñuel, and I think he thinks a little much of himself, but okay, I like it overall. And then the third act came around, and he just hit you over the head with his self-satisfied hammer over and over and over and over. And I don't mind overindulgence as like a theme in a film, but there is a fine line. And he sprinted past it and didn't stop for like another hour. Yeah, that movie did not justify its runtime whatsoever.
I felt that way when I saw Glass Onion. I thought that movie was a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't like Glass Onion either. But yeah, Triangle of Sadness, lots to like, and then a lot of other stuff to be frustrated with. So that's not a movie I hated. Overall, I think it's decent. I don't love it. On a good day, I might enjoy it, or I definitely enjoy parts of it. But I was disappointed because when it wins the Palme d'Or, which for those who don't know is like the ultimate award. It's the best film of the year at the most acclaimed film festival. So if anything wins a Palme d'Or, that is automatically a seal of, oh, this is it. Like past Palme d'Or winners you might have heard of include Taxi Driver and Apocalypse Now. So generally, if a movie wins that award, it's a big deal. So I was very excited to see it in the theater, and then it just kind of, felt a little deflating after that.
Have you ever had the inverse experience where you went in expecting to hate something and
oh yeah,
and you ended up loving it, or at least having fun with it?
Yeah, too many times to count. But did you see Perfect Days?
I haven't.
It came out last year. It's by Wim Wenders of Paris, Texas fame, and many other movies, but Paris, Texas is his big one. But Perfect Days, it's a story about a guy who cleans toilets for a living in Tokyo, and that was one of the most joyous film experiences ever. I had no expectations going in. I didn't know anything about it.
I'm just Googling it.
It's just awesome. Like a slice of life about a guy living his life and cleaning toilets. And it's not just like he's happy all the time, obviously, but it was really something special. And I had no expectations going in and was incredibly pleasantly surprised. So, yeah. That was a surprise because other things I loved from last year, like Killers of the Flower Moon and Zone of Interest, I really loved, but I was expecting that I would enjoy them a lot. I didn't know how much, but I didn't expect that I would really enjoy them as much as I did. Whereas with Perfect Days, like it's been a long time since Wim Wenders made a good movie, so I don't know what this is going to be all about, but yeah, no, it was It was fantastic.
I'll hit you with one that might annoy you. I watched The Minions Rise of Gru, and I went into it just expecting it to be a piece of crap, and I actually thought it was like really stupidly hilarious. Like not in an intentional way, but it was just like so because the minions have this ironic value to them, and there's just a part where for no reason they just learned kung fu. A lot of random, just the plot made no sense. Like there's a minion who.
Okay, I can appreciate something like that. I don't mind stuff like that. Like I just wish they would, if they have like a willingness to get weird. That's what I really like. I don't like when.
It's a subversive masterpiece.
Like, yeah, right. Like the Meg. Like dude, this is a movie about a big shark. That's all you need. Jason Statham versus Big Shark. Feel free to get weird with it, take some swings. It's not going to change anything once the audience is already in the theater. You're going to get a dumb sequel anyway. So just why make it the safest, most boring thing ever when you could do something fun with it? So something like the Minions learning Kung Fu, I would probably be very into that. Anything that's not just going through the motions is just the worst thing a movie can do.
I would agree. Did you ever see those Planet of the Apes remakes?
No, I remember I saw them I saw a couple of them on a plane a long time ago. I don't remember anything about them, but I remember thinking these are actually kind of okay.
I wasn't huge on them. I feel like it was a bit weird that it's about like monkeys that could talk, but it's played so seriously.
I kind of gave it a pass for that, you know. I think
I just found it a bit bizarre that there's like monkeys talking, and it just has the most serious tone of all time, and the main monkey just has like an angry face, like he's epic. Maybe I would have liked if that went in a more silly direction. Maybe, I don't know.
I get what you mean, but like in the age of like Deadpool irony and smarm that we're oversaturated with
I
nowadays,
suppose.
I appreciate anything like Dune, for example, is another great like not that
Right.
there isn't the occasional joke, but I really like that by and large they have dispensed with the undercutting any moment of seriousness with a lame joke. You know, so I definitely appreciate the rare, you know, big movie that comes out now where it's not just quipping nonstop. Like you've seen those like Godzilla, not Godzilla -1, that was great, but like Godzilla with the MonsterVerse ones, right? Where Godzilla is messing something up, and then someone goes, "Oh, geez, that's a big monster," or some stupid nonsense like that. You know,
Yeah, the Marvel.
if a movie is willing to commit to, you know, some seriousness, I'm very forgiving of it, even if the premise is silly or something.
I feel like we're healing and people are really getting over that, and like everybody loved Dune. It was the biggest movie of the
I
year.
hope so.
Because
Yeah.
like,
but Deadpool 3 is coming out, so
well, I'm hopeful because you know recently like Barbie, Oppenheimer did really well, and then
That's
Dune's
true,
doing
that's
really
true.
well. I feel like actual
Oh,
good movies are actually like the biggest blockbusters recently, and Marvel
That's
is kind
true,
of
yeah.
failing. Like The Flash lost a bunch of money.
yeah.
I think we're
and,
over it. I think we're over it. Well,
I hope so. I really do.
and then Spider-Verse
Uh,
was good because that was actually creative and stuff.
I like Spider-Verse. I still think they quip too much, though. It's when every fight scene
suppose.
has all the spider people just nonstop going, "Oh, geez, I hope I get home in time to see my shows." You know, like
It is a bit like that, but I feel like it at least leans into it to the maximum extent, and it's at least just extreme in one direction.
you know, like the Maguire. I think the Maguire Spider-Mans have a good balance. Like I
Yeah.
think they have, like if you think of like some of the bigger fights from that movie, from Spider-Man 2, then you get like one like line in there and that's it, and the rest of it is completely serious. Like in the bank, you know, or the big one on the train when he's fighting him. Like he gets like one liner where it's like I guess it starts on the clock tower, but there's like no quipping at all. And then at the end he says you have a train to catch, and that but it's more menacing than like ha ha funny. So even that, so I think that has a good balance of, you know, not being afraid to be earnest, cheesy, but still taking it seriously.
Yeah, but also when he jumps off this train, it actually defies the laws of physics because he ends up further forward on the train than would be possible scientifically. So I actually can't watch that film anymore as a result.
Do you enjoy the CinemaSins plot hole style
No,
of
that just my last guest brought that up. He's a physics. It was Moxie Boosted. I was just making a reference to that. No.
Yeah, well, it also exists
he was
in the
just
world
being
of
silly.
Spider-Man, so I think he can get over it.
We got beef, folks. Moxie Boosted and BKC are beefing over Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. It's happening. What is your favorite? I realized, by the way, I'm talking a lot about movies. I'm enjoying the discussion. Sorry, folks.
I think the people just like hearing the talking. I think they'll like.
I
the
hope
movie
so.
stuff.
I don't know.
It'll-
My
it'll
audience is
enrich them.
Pokemon fans. Do they like movie discussion? I don't know. We got BKC on, so.
This will enrich them, I'm sure.
What is your favorite score in a movie? This is a question from
Suspiria.
I'm a Genius. Oh, I haven't seen that.
It's absolutely suspicious. I have a lot. I love the Akira soundtrack, for example. It's one of my go-to
yes.
gym tunes. But if I had to, and I mean, a lot of my favorite movies have great scores. Like the Taxi Driver Jazz is obviously incredible. The Drive soundtrack obviously is the most memed thing in existence, but I mean, it's astonishing. But Suspiria, without doubt, it has the main theme in Suspiria alone, you know, gives it that position, and the rest of it is just extraordinary as well. But yeah, without doubt, Suspiria.
I gotta check that one out. You know what's have you ever seen
good.
12 Monkeys?
I have.
That has a really cool main theme that uses like an accordion, I think. It's got this weird like dissonant sound to it. And I thought that was really memorable and very very cool. Like it's a weird instrument to use, and I thought it really stood out.
I
and fit with
really
the movie.
like the short film that 12 Monkeys is based on. It's called La Jetée. It's really good. The
Oh, I
basic
gotta check
premise
that
of
out.
the time traveling back to it's really good. It's only 30 minutes and it's by Chris Marker, who's excellent. Speaking of offbeat scores, this is not the first thing you think of when you talk about this movie, but the score for Harakiri is really understated and really, really haunting. And also, you don't really think about this when you think about this movie, but Eyes Wide Shut, that theme, once they get to the mansion and the party, both the first one when they're in the circle and then when he's actually going through and seeing the proceedings, both of them are just extraordinary.
I do
So
remember the one where they're like yelling that weird chanting. Is that what you're referring
yeah,
to?
and then he slams the staff into the ground, and
That has stuck with me.
yeah,
Actually, you're right. I
it's
randomly think
great.
of that sometimes in the masks. That's an image that sticks. That
Oh,
gets.
it's
Yeah.
Kubrick's best. Kubrick's best, I think.
You think it's just what about Barry Lyndon, folks?
Oh, I'm an Eyes Wide Shut guy. Eyes Wide Shut, 2001, maybe The Shining instead of 2001, but those are the next two. And then after
Yeah.
that, I think you kind of can go either way, whether it's Full Metal Jacket or Barry Lyndon or whatever. I like The Killing, actually. That's a really good one. His noir and Paths of Glory, and
Those are the
obviously
only
Doctor
two I haven't
Strangelove.
seen. The Killing and Paths of Glory. One
They're
day.
very good.
One day,
And Doctor
folks.
Strangelove, obviously.
For a long time, The Shining was my favorite, but I watched Barry Lyndon like a couple of years ago, and I thought it was just like a perfect movie. I don't know. I really.
It's real. No, it's really special. Oh, I don't know how I didn't mention this earlier, but I love the Badalamenti soundtracks for all those David Lynch movies. Um,
True.
the one, sorry,
True.
yeah, like the one for Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me is unbelievable. Like I think Fire Walk with Me is better than the show, and that extends to the soundtrack as well. Like the Pink Room theme is, and then Blue Frank following it up. Oh my god! And Questions in a World of Blue and all that. But my absolute favorite is like I love the Mulholland Drive soundtrack in general, and the main theme is great and everything. And when it comes back at the end, it's like seeing the face of God. But the love theme from Mulholland Drive, it didn't get me like this at first, but ever since I've really like opened up to this movie, like the scene in which it plays in the love scene, it is one of the most emotional experiences I've ever had. It gets me like behind the intestines is an expression I think is appropriate here. I cannot like even just like thinking about it is going to get me to that place if I keep doing it. But like just listening to it it's unbelievable. So the Mulholland Drive love theme, that's unbelievable. It is the greatest thing those two ever did together. It's yeah.
So maybe Mulholland Drive is your true answer.
Uh
But it's hard, isn't it, to pick a favorite?
I think it's Suspiria because the Suspiria theme works best as a standalone thing, whereas the Mulholland Drive theme, love theme, works so well largely in the context of the scene. But
Okay.
the Mulholland Drive love theme, I don't know if it's the association or not. I don't know if I could divorce them from each other. So I think it's still Suspiria, but the Mulholland Drive one is just, God, really, really ridiculous.
Good answers. It's difficult. It's always difficult for you to pick favorites. You can't commit to one thing or another. You end up listing 30 options.
Yeah, or even the theme from The Thing, very similar, but
Yeah,
or very very simple, I should say, but incredibly effective.
that was what's his name? Ennio Morricone.
Yeah, but he was doing like the John Carpenter style. He wasn't even doing his
Yeah.
own style. So
I guess it's getting a bit late over here. I could keep talking, but
Yeah.
we'll end this with one final question from Hon John 666. BKC, what film would you recast with Tyranitar as the lead actor?
Do I get to rewrite the script?
Good question. He can only say his own name, right? He can only say Tyranitar, so that would inherently rewrite the script on its own.
Well, it's too easy to just say a Godzilla movie, so I'll do something more interesting. I think it would be really interesting to see Tyranitar's inability to say anything beyond his own name as a meditation on the theme of the inability to communicate. So, with that logic, I would like to see him in Michelangelo Antonioni's trilogy of L'Avventura, what's the second one? La Notte and L'Eclisse. So, or The Adventure, The Night, and The Eclipse. Red Desert, maybe, too. Oh, because desert, sandstorm, so maybe T-Tar's pretty fitting there.
That's the most BKC answer of all time.
Yeah, I think...
what if you put him in Tar? He's the titular character. He's directing
That's
the...
true.
But then
I was
how
gonna
is
say
he
you
going to
could put him
direct the damn orchestra? What's he going to do?
That would be pretty surreal, you know.
There's going to be Sandstorm in there.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. We'll also put him in Antonioni's Blow Up, just because that Antonioni 60s run is really something absurd. So, yeah. And also, so we're putting him in the role of Monica Vitti in the first four, and then in the role of David Hemmings in Blow Up. And for a more fun answer, I would say the Terminator. As the Terminator, obviously.
Mecha Tyranitar.
Yes,
There
absolutely.
All right.
Not Iron Hands. I'm talking Mecha Tyranitar a la Mecha Godzilla.
Of course not. He's got Iron Thorns, actually, which is even lamer.
Oh, Iron Hands
Iron Hands is
Hariyama.
Hariyama.
Right. I'm just always thinking of Hariyama because it's the greatest.
Well, thank you so much for our great chat. This was a long one. Hope you guys enjoyed.
My pleasure.
Mostly movie chat, but that's fun. We love it.
Hey, now the viewers have the movie recommendations for the next year.
It'll take a lifetime to get all through those.
And they will be very enriched.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.